So good evening, everyone. I just want to just take a moment. It's been 20 years since we started Densho, and this is the first time we really have done something like a large gala like this. But because it was our 20th, we thought it was really important. And I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, doing an event like this takes a lot of work. But just in this last hour, being out in the lobby, meeting so many people, and just really getting really present to how much we're supported, just really feels good. It really makes all this worthwhile. So thank you for all being here. And I want to share a little bit about the origins of Densho. 20 years ago, a small group of volunteers got together in an old church in Bellevue, and we asked the question, what would happen if Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during World War II, who were put in concentration camps, what would happen if they shared their story and shared their story with the whole world? And so think about that. What would it be like if all Americans knew that 120,000 Japanese Americans were placed in camps, not because they were guilty of anything, but just because of their Japanese ancestry? And furthermore, what would it be like in our country if people really got that politicians or the media could use a climate of hatred and fear to promote their interests at the expense of a vulnerable minority? I mean, those are the kind of discussions we had 20 years ago. And from those discussions, we decided, more than decided, we were committed to saying, let's collect the stories, the real personal, authentic stories of Japanese Americans and what happened to them during World War II. And then let's use the most state-of-the-art digital technology so we could share it with the world. And so that's what we did. And it was really important to us to get these personal stories because we really believed that it was going to be the personal stories that really changed these conversations. And so let me give you some examples. And we did a lot because we knew that these stories could be used in so many different cases. Here's an example. There's a story that happened just a few blocks away from here. This is a story that my father-in-law told me, Frank Yamasaki. And Frank died just a few short months ago. But what Frank told us, he told a story about being at the Pike Place Market. And he's there with his Italian-American friends. And they're happy-go-lucky teenagers. And it was a hot summer day. So what they decided to do was, let's go swimming at the Crystal Pool, which is close by the market. And so they go there laughing, having a good time. And when Frank went to the cashier to pay, the cashier took one look at his Japanese face. He turned his head with a scowl and told Frank, "Get out." And when Frank told us that story, we have a video recorded, you could see the pain, the humiliation, and the shame that he felt at that moment. Really experiencing racial discrimination. And I told the story, or thought about the story, because here we are at a top downtown Seattle hotel, and just a few decades before, people who looked like us, like Japanese, probably could not sit here as we are doing now. And so much we take for granted. Another story that came to mind as I got ready for this was, we're coming up to the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And I've heard literally hundreds and hundreds of stories about what it was like for Japanese Americans. How they heard about it, what they thought, what they did that day. But we also had an interview with a woman, Helen Minahira, and she actually witnessed the actual bombing of Pearl Harbor. And I remember this story vividly because when she told me, it was like she was going back in time. And as she told me, she said the planes came right over her head because she lived at Eva Beach, which is the beach right outside of Pearl Harbor. And as she talked about the planes going over, she talked about the deafening roar, and then the explosions, and then the smoke coming up. And as she told me the story, I remember distinctly thinking, this moment that she's telling, what a transformation in terms of what it's going to make for her life and the lives of Japanese Americans. Because after that, all the things that happened to Japanese Americans. So that's another powerful story. As the mayor was talking about his father-in-law, Fred Shiosaki, I interviewed Fred years ago about what he did in the 442. And Fred talked about being part of the 442 and was part of the rescue of the Lost Battalion, where this segregated unit of the 442 rescued a regiment from Texas, 211 men. But in the process of saving those 211 men, they suffered hundreds and hundreds of casualties, many more than the men they saved. And Fred told me the story, but the story that really hit me was right after the war, Fred was at a train station in Washington, D.C., and he was making his way back to Spokane, Washington, where he was born and raised. But as he was waiting at the train station, a soldier came up to Fred and said, are you with the 442? Because he saw Fred's patch. And then furthermore, he says, and were you there at the rescue of the Lost Battalion? And Fred said, yes. And the soldier went up and said, well, I want to shake your hand because I was one of those Texans that you saved. And furthermore, so I want to thank you. And then the Texan said, and if that were you guys up there, we would do the same thing. At that point, though, Fred didn't shake his hand. In fact, he walked away. And I asked Fred, so why? And Fred said, well, he wasn't proud of that. But what he recognized, what he remembered, was all his buddies, all the men who died or were wounded, saving those men. And what he also realized was, he said, when that soldier said that, he knew that a unit of white soldiers would not have risked their lives, taken so many casualties, and saved a unit of Japanese Americans. He says that's just the reality. And so when he said that, it just rang false. And so he couldn't stomach it, so he walked away. Such a powerful story. I mean, there are literally, I could be up here for days talking about these powerful stories. And we're still collecting them. Last month, we collected our 900th interview for the project. And we did this interview with Lillian Horita, who was reluctant to do this interview, and went to her home. And we also had Lillian's daughter, Mari Horita, was there, and Lillian's granddaughter, Naomi. And while we were there, we asked Mari and Naomi what it meant for us to do the interview with their grandmother. And so we want to show a short video here of that day.
She did not talk about this a lot when I was growing up, and I think that says a lot because of the personal story, I think, is what I think about most.
My brothers are up there painting. The sign used to say Tokyo Cleaners. Not a very popular name right after the war.
A lot of today's generation doesn't know that this happened, and so it's important that we spread the word about this so that it never happens ever again.
The legacy Densho offers is an American story with ongoing relevance. During a time of fear and hate, the United States government incarcerated innocent people solely because of their ancestry. What was it like to be the target of this discrimination?
And I was thinking, how could this be happening? Because somehow I knew it wasn't right. And I was thinking, well, if my parents hadn't been born Japanese, I wouldn't be here. I was very hurt that my country didn't trust me. And that really has stuck to me.
I'm very proud of my mother for talking about this. It's incredibly difficult, and it's so personal, and yet if every person kept it to themselves and didn't share it, and if it wasn't preserved somewhere like Densho, it would be lost. The stories would be lost, not just the personal stories, but the bigger memory of this really horrific but important event in our history.
So thank you. So Lillian's here tonight, and I know she's embarrassed to be singled out, but thank you, Lillian, and thank you, Mari, for participating. When we started the project 20 years ago, the people we interviewed, the Nisei, who were adults or teenagers during World War II, when we started, they were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s when we were doing the interviews. 20 years later, they're now in their upper 80s, their 90s, and many of them pass away. In fact, I was telling someone outside in the lobby, this is the first year when we look at those 900 interviews, what we recognize is that more than half of the people we've interviewed in the last 20 years have now passed away. And so that, to me, is a really sobering thought. And not only have so many passed away, but many of the people we've interviewed who are still alive are very frail. Their memories aren't as good. We invited pretty much everyone to come to tonight, but it's really hard for them to come to the event. But tonight, we have about 20 narrators who made it to this event. And at this time, I'm going to have them stand, but hold your applause. I want the narrators, if you're here and are able to stand, please stand, because I want to say some things to you. And so, Peggy Tanamura is right here, so I'll start. So, hold your applause. Let me, because what I want to say was thank you and all the other narrators who couldn't make it, and all the narrators who have passed away. Because I know it took a lot of courage for you to tell your story, especially in front of a video camera. That was hard. It was, but yet you told us stories of your parents, of your family, of your childhood, of what happened during the war. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to promise you and the other narrators that your stories will be cherished, and cherished forever. That's my promise. And so at this time, please give a hand to all the narrators here. So let me explain a little bit how these stories are going to be cherished and preserved forever. We've taken your interviews, your stories, and we've digitized them, and they're on our award-winning website, densho.org. They're there along with over 100,000 images of historic photographs, documents, newspapers. They're also there with an online encyclopedia with over 1,000 articles. In fact, we've been called the gold standard for access, not just with Japanese American history, but nationally acclaimed. And let me explain this. So the Oral History Association, they gave us their Voice of the People Award, the Stetson Kennedy Vox Populi Voice of the People Award, for the powerful stories we had and that we make them so accessible. So again, national award. We were also given a national award by the Society of American Archivists. These are the people who really think about how do you hold things for hundreds and hundreds of years. And when they saw not only our materials, but how we were preserving them, they gave us also the Hammer Keegan Award, again, for outstanding achievement in the area of archivists. And then in terms of the materials and the educational purpose, the American Library Association, they also gave us a national award for an online history project. Because again, not only the quality of the content, but our ability to organize it so students, teachers, librarians can access this information really easily. And so we've had a lot of accolades over time. And we got one just this week. Just 2 days ago, we got a letter from President Barack Obama. And in this letter, he wrote, and it was really elegant, he said, Densho recognizes the indignities millions of innocent people have often silently faced throughout history and strives to use the lessons of our past to reawaken our moral imaginations. For 2 decades, it has worked to keep alive the memories of the over 120,000 Japanese Americans interned in the United States during World War II, reminding us of our nation's responsibility to come to terms with our mistakes and remake ourselves to be better. All our people, no matter who they are or where they come from, deserve to be able to go about their days in safety and with dignity, unafraid of facing repercussions for crimes they did not commit. So just a quick note, and I haven't told this to Dale Minami, our keynote speaker, but President Obama was our first choice for a speaker. When we actually asked him to come speak, but because of the election and everything, it was he couldn't fit it in his schedule. So I just wanted to mention that to you, Dale. But the message that President Obama wrote, boy, just really rang true, because what he does, it really strikes to the heart of what Densho is about. I mean, we preserve and share the Japanese American story, not just for the Japanese American community, but for all of America. Because regardless of who you are or where you've come from, we want you to live a life of dignity. And so that's our focus. That's our focus at Densho. And how we really focus is we spend a lot of time in the classroom. Our focus is to really create materials, curriculum, training for teachers and students so that they can really learn about these issues. And it's working. And the way we know it's working is we've received hundreds and hundreds of messages from teachers telling us how valuable our work is in the classroom. And we know these stories have impact. We get emails from teachers, and I just got a recent email about a week ago from a teacher. I believe he's in Renton. He taught middle school, and he took our online course, which takes about 4 hours for teachers, and then immediately he went to the classroom, and for 2 days he took 4 of his classes, so 120 middle school students, and they talked about the impact of racism, not only during World War II, but the impact of racism in our world today. And so these are the discussions that we really want to generate that are not only happening in Washington State. So this teacher was one of among over 100 teachers in Washington State who have gone through this training. But these trainings are going throughout the country because we're online. And more than that, furthermore, what we're doing now at Densho is we're reaching out to other communities. We've been working with the African American community, the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the American Indian community, the Latino community, and other Asian American communities. Because what we realize when we sit down at the table and talk, our stories are very similar. And for us to work with them, to hear their stories, to share our stories, what we recognize is we can work together to really address some of the issues. I mean, what we've talked about is it's for us to really challenge and broaden this concept of who is American. And so this leads me to my closing. A year ago, we did a video. It was titled, What Does an American Look Like? And to help me with this, I asked my daughter, Tani Ikeda, who's a filmmaker, to do this because I wanted to get a fresh perspective. And so she had the writer Eric Liu help us with the script. And then she got George Takei to do the narration. And so what I like to do, and this is special for me, although we worked on this over a year ago, tonight's the first time that I get to show this video with her in presence because she lives in Los Angeles. And so at this point, thank you for listening to me, but please take a look at the video, What Does an American Look Like?
What does an American look like? Anyone can recite the Constitution. Living up to it, that's something else. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States went to war against Japan. But our government also imagined an enemy within. In one stroke, 110,000 innocent Japanese Americans were incarcerated. Better safe than sorry replaced due process under law. Military necessity trumped equal protection. Our American ideals were discarded when they were needed most. How did it happen? What does an American look like? These are questions for history and for today. Learn more at densho.org.